we have the open source, freely available infrastructure that everyone can use. And again, we have incumbents moving in that are trying to capture and close source, potentially, parts of that stack so that it's not interoperable. And that is going to be really bad for a lot of people. We cannot allow that to happen with the Internet of Money again. And right now is the time when we need to act.
How do you separate the good from the bad? I want to be clear, when we're talking about stablecoins, when I'm talking about stablecoins, what I'm talking about is a fiat-backed stablecoin.
Crypto may finally be going mainstream, and the passage of the stablecoin legislation drafted by the Senate.
It's time to explore crypto for Klarna.
MoneyGram CEO said it could be a game changer for fintech firms.
Stablecoins can make huge impacts for us in terms of how we think about running global treasury, the movement of actually money. In addition, it's going to allow real-time settlements.
A lot of non-financial firms, I mean, Apple, Amazon, Walmart, Uber, they're all contemplating launching their own stablecoin.
And the question really is, who makes money off stablecoins?
If we don't manage for the stablecoin economy to make the user experience better for self-custodial identity solutions, then we are pushing everyone, every business into using centralized solutions, using proprietary platforms for the sake of being competitive. If we allow this to happen and we allow for centralized honeypots again.
Only very recently, the past few decades, have we moved more and more into this digital centralized system.
All of the neobanks, to an extent, are kind of beautiful interfaces around like the same banking rails, right? I think it's fantastic that they exist, but it's still very much kind of putting lipstick on a pig.
Let's say 99% of the infrastructure that we see in financial service and banking would be decentralized and on-chain.
I do think that most assets will be tokenized. The question, though, is again, how much is that visible to folks, right?
The data that describes us, that's written about us, that's largely created by us, is not controlled by us. I mean, the internet is fucked right now.
When the internet emerged, people like Tim Berners-Lee made a very deliberate choice. They gave the core innovation away for free. The fundamental protocols were open. Anyone could run an email server. Anyone could build a website. You didn't need permission from anyone. Today that feels normal, but at the time it wasn't.
When you did this, did you have a sense of what it could become and what it might be from the very beginning?
I think everybody involved, well, the people who picked it up, and I certainly have a sense of what it could become. But there's a huge difference between what it could become and what it was going to become. So when I was initially trying to persuade people that having all the information that could be accessed through a network, linkable into one web, it was really difficult to persuade people. It was not apparent at all that the web was going to take off. For the first 2 years, it was hard work. And so 1990, 1991, 1992, at any point, it looked as though the web could just have vanished and become a piece of history.
What changed with Web 2 wasn't the infrastructure itself. The infrastructure largely stayed open. What changed was the part that mattered most for interoperability, the social graph. By closing the social graph, platforms removed the ability for users to move. And once users couldn't move, competition disappeared. That's how we ended up with an oligarchy of closed, rent-seeking platforms built on top of open infrastructure created by others. The consequences weren't just bad for users, they were also bad for businesses that became dependent on those platforms. Now we are seeing the same pattern emerge again, this time with money.
I don't think that people realize the crossroads that we're at in a double sense. The fascinating thing is that we are just at that point in history where we have this new industry just evolving. You know, it's a land grab. It's similar to how social media evolved. And also there we had the question: is it going to be closed or is it going to be open? And the same question poses itself today.
That's the problem now. What could we have done differently? If you had payment embedded in the browser or even micropayment, would we have paid for content and create those habits rather than rely on advertising? Once you rely on advertising, then it's all about eyeballs and attention. And then the second one is actually probably identity. If you have some form of identity or Sybil resistance embedded in the web, then bot proliferation would have been much harder, etc. And if we could have relied on open standard basically for payment and identity, we wouldn't have to rely on centralized, closed, gated system to protect us from that, while at the same time they make money out of that. When I started working in tech a long time ago, when I joined Amazon, and I think we all felt we were making the world better, removing borders, whether it's in commerce with Amazon, in payment at Visa. A lot of people came there with I think the right vision, but how do we improve it? How do we make it work for everyone and not just for a few? I would rather call it an open economy. And yes, it's not perfect. Stablecoins are controlled by central issuers, but I think we can still play a very strong role on removing friction, making it work for everyone, and just think about the entire world having access to currencies, whether it's dollar or others, the entire world being able to interact on the same network. There's something really powerful. Usually when you remove friction, if you make, we move from letters to fax, then to email, then to text messages. Anytime you improve friction, you increase in some way prosperity. So I do think that's what that open economy has to do.
We need to go back to basically how the internet evolved and how social media evolved to just understand it better, because it's the same patterns. Funny enough, you have Facebook buying Instagram for $1 billion, kicking off the whole social media frenzy, and a bridge being purchased by Stripe for just the same amount. And we see the same things basically happening again that happened in the early days of social media. You had the boom and bust of the cycle before that harmed the infrastructure, cheap server costs, drew in talent, got people to adopt the internet, or respectively crypto and DeFi. You just have this open field, everything is there, the infrastructure is there. And now you have the big companies that are jumping in, realizing this is a global phenomenon, it might be a winner-takes-it-all market, and they just go in aggressively buying up different companies to get a pole position. And you have a bit of a complacency of the existing players that think that maybe it's still a national market, a national winner-takes-it-all market. Spoiler alert, it never was. Not for social media and not for the stablecoin economy.
Finding ways in which you can control elements of your identity and maybe share or sell certain other elements and what makes you comfortable, and the infrastructure and businesses who kind of help you do this in a compliant way, they're going to be the real winners, right? They're going to be the next Metas and Amazons of this world, because that question is not going away. Especially as, I think I have 50 different passwords, and for some of them, God, I have them written somewhere, I forget them, right? I'm sure like most people that are watching this, I don't know about yourself, probably not, but most people who are watching this probably have like passwords spread around everywhere, right? And I think I read somewhere that the third largest economy in the world after US and China is actually scammers, right? Who steal your identity and kind of abuse it and take control of some of your funds flows and effectively steal them, right? So these are big, huge problems which require like long-term thinking and solutions. And I think for me personally, just following that space, not necessarily from a professional capacity, but from a personal interest capacity, is fascinating.
But like a lot of the kind of early internet companies have become so large that they kind of face a very similar struggle. You become large and you become an incumbent, and then you're kind of becoming anti-progress, basically. All of the neobanks, to an extent, are kind of beautiful interfaces around like the same banking rails, right? I think like it's fantastic that they exist, but it's still very much kind of putting lipstick on a pig. A lot of places that have unstable currencies, high inflation, bad central bank policy, and giving everyone the ability to kind of freely choose whatever currency they hold, and whether that is USD or local currency, and like having flexibility and going back and forth between those, I think is massively valuable, and I think makes for a better world, basically. Sounds massively grandiose and too large, but I truly believe that stablecoins are kind of a humanitarian force for good, basically.
We live today in a state of anomaly. For many millennia, the economy was very peer-to-peer and decentralized, meaning like if you think about an economy based on gold and silver or even banknotes, when you go to the grocery, you and the grocer have an interaction and you have full ownership of the gold coins that are in your possession. There's no one that looks over your shoulder, no one can stop you from using them. This was the way the world economy worked for, since ever. Only very recently, in the past few decades, have we moved more and more into this digital centralized system where every interaction between me and a grocer is mediated by huge central parties. This is an abomination. This is unreasonable. Only with crypto in a decentralized system, in a self-sovereign system, do you truly own your life. And we need to go back to that state.
We're talking about the actual transfer of value happening and like tokenized assets being the first time since like cash or cowrie shells or whatever folks used before at the advent of cash, like in ancient, Sumer and Mesopotamia, like either handing you the asset or this is the only two times that's happened in history. I do think that most assets will be tokenized. The question though is, again, how much is that visible to folks, right? And I think that for a certain fraction of transactions, it's gonna be highly visible, and for others, it's gonna be invisible, and for some, there'll be some type of, kind of hybrid state, right? Wherein perhaps I'm using things on a custodial platform that are very fungible to a self-custodial platform. And I think you'll see an interplay amongst the three of those. Where that rolls out though, I'm not a futurist. I don't really have an opinion, but I would agree, now I don't know what that means again, for the average retail user, bank or corporate, that the vast majority of assets are gonna find their way onto one of these chains of some type, yeah.
A city is more than a steel and glass. It is movement, freedom, systems woven together. Cars flow like data, streets connect like networks, people crossing paths like signals in constant motion. Every flow hides a signal, every system a pulse. What makes it alive is not the pattern, but the humans behind it. When new infrastructure emerges, it usually starts open. That's how adoption happens. People that sometimes don't even know each other build, experiment, move fast. But over time, something else tends to happen. Platforms form around that infrastructure, and openness fades. But platforms don't centralize because they are bad. They centralize because it's rational. Once a platform controls access to users, it controls the ecosystem. At that point, value capture becomes inevitable, and all efforts go to preserve that. Many businesses have learned this the hard way, usually too late, once dependency has already set in. That's why supporting open, neutral infrastructure isn't only an ideological choice, it is a business decision. It's about avoiding lock-in, preserving optionality, and not outsourcing your future to someone else's incentives. But there's an important distinction that often gets missed. Open source on its own isn't enough. Open source only works if the system is interoperable, and interoperability only exists if a user can move freely. The moment access to users becomes gated, through proprietary identity, closed accounts, or non-portable credentials, interoperability breaks. And once interoperability breaks, consolidation wins by default. If users can't move, new businesses and ideas can't survive. And if competition disappears, we're back to platforms again. So the real question isn't whether this technology works. It's whether we allow it to remain open at the level that matters the most, the user.
The data that describes us, that's written about us, that's largely created by us, is not controlled by us. And so in much of digital space, your identity is a series of rumors that parties you don't know are spreading behind your back. Because 50% of online traffic comes from unidentified, unaccountable bots. We cannot facilitate digital payments at scale unless we know who we are paying. And so the development of open finance, the scalability of stablecoins, the promise of agent-to-agent payments, all rest on the success of decentralized identity at scale. Implementing identity technology in action, in service of proving who you are without revealing the underlying information that makes you you.
So, and I can follow like every transaction. So if I know like a wallet address of somebody from my network, that's a crazy no-go. And I think to have these private transfers, and I think there's a lot of in a compliant way as well. I think there are a few great developments also in recent times. So that's definitely one of the missing pieces. And the other thing is digital identity. But I think we talked about that a couple of times already in the past. Because in the end, you have the wallet. The wallet is like a bank account, but it's unidentified, and you could also use a wallet for kind of like illegal use cases. So let's be honest. But I think having an identity just would make it much more easy to drive adoption in the financial services space, especially also when you then have financial services that are built on DeFi rails. So digital identity plus the privacy of transfers, I think these two things, if they are cracked or these nuts are cracked, then we will see a lot of adoption.
I think that's true. I think that an identity layer helps the stablecoin economy and the next wave of banking in two different critical moments. And one of them is when they're trying to set it up and there needs to be like a compliant identity layer for everything to be able to be orchestrated. And later, because that identity is portable, banks focus less on locking people in and making sure that the quality of services offered is good, because that system they adopted in the first place that made everything easier for them is also available for everyone else. And so users can much more easily vote with their feet as they can anywhere else. And this pushes the whole industry forward because suddenly we're focused on quality and not like barriers.
Generally, if you get that amount of power, you're not going to give it up. It's rare. The only thing we've seen is maybe releasing of patents, like what Tesla did. But generally, once you have power, you're not giving that up. And the system works in that level. The ability to rationalize existing systems generally can only be done by a founder or after a huge crisis where you're forced to do this. And what I mean by is cutting government regulation, cutting headcount in a bloated system, switching over the infrastructure on simpler rails.
I think I understand where at least part of that comes from. Like as an engineer, I am definitely attracted to the idea of like building the ultimate elegant, pure system for things to work in. And I can imagine that like, if I come in with this utopia, with this illusion that if only you build a very, very elegant and simple system that just works neatly for everybody, then everything's going to be great. And then, like, when the rubber hits the road, you find out, oh, right, it doesn't work for this weird use case, and it doesn't work for that weird use case, because identity is really messy, and regulations are really messy. And so I can imagine folks just like, it's totally normal to give up at that point, and it's totally normal to even say, like, this is so hard, but that's not why I gave up. This is actually wrong, and I'm gonna go do something else. And there's that cognitive dissonance that is hard to hard to overcome. And so I think it is good that we actually started in the mess, because then we might have fallen prey to the same temptation instead of still being here today and trying to make it better today.
What brought us to this point is actually that we had this plumber attitude, and we were able to get to 1 million people onboarded, because that allowed us to learn about it. That allowed us to get to the point where we knew what worked and what doesn't work. And I mean, God knows we tried a lot of things. It's not just us that is enough to build this. We need everyone to make this push for their own good, to make sure that Web3 and the Internet of Money stays open.